Back from the dead, baby. Welcome everybody to the Ember podcast. We had a bit of a speed bump, a hiatus, if you will, but now that everything's back to normal, everything is firing on all cylinders, what better time to bring us back? I'm Svetlin, your excellent, now full of himself host, and there's been a bit of a furor in the community recently about the various regions in the world of Ember Sword. And we really wanted to clear that up, and what better way to bring the podcast back than with an explanation so you guys can shut up with your wrong opinions. With me, I have Sam, our lore master. Sam, say hi.
Hi, I'm Sam, and like Svetlin, I'm excellent too.
We are excellent together. It's just this. It's a Ponzi scheme of excellence. Bright Star Studios is. So the purpose of this podcast, as you can see from the title, is us discussing regions. And we have a bit of a structure to this whole discussion. We mostly want to clear up the misconceptions on what the regions are, what they entail, and that's why Sam is here, because who better to clear that up than the man who created them? And then we are going to do a bit of a deep dive towards the latter part of the podcast. So, Sam, let's start with the overview of the nations.
Well, sure thing. Thanabus is made up of 4 regions, as you all know. Solarwood, Ediso, Severand, and Duscaron. Now, I know that people have the notions about the biomes, which are generally correct, but I want to just go into, a bit more specifics. So, first, Ediso, that's the nation where the heart of the Republic lies, with Skyder. That's where both Ediso and Solarwood are governed. And it is a nation that is ruled by a great people who, like, as I said, the Republic, but the people themselves, they almost have a Nordic quality because they live in the most frigid part of Thanabus. And the reason for this is that the terraforming machine that called Skyder, that it crashed during the catastrophe, and as a result, the climate there has gone way out of whack. It's like the most extreme climate, so it's very cold, and thus they've built their society upon log cabins, massive ones, along the exterior, yet there's an entanglement with the technology from Skyder itself, so there is plenty of heat generated from the machine that once was a terraforming device, and their society is kind of enveloped in this old world, if you will, that crashed down upon them, so they built upon it. They basically hollowed it out and said, hey, this is where we're making our stand. And they're doing quite well, actually. I read some comments that I hypothesize that they are hillbillies. It's like, these people, they, govern the northern half of of Thanabus, so yeah, I wouldn't exactly call them that. And to the east of Ediso is Solarwood, and this is a nation that is built around Burkhalter's Academy, and this is a forest nation. And actually, as a bit of a fun bit of history is that Solarwood Forest used to encompass the entire northern hemisphere of Thanabus. That, Ediso used to be a forest. But, this is lore-wise, But with the catastrophe, half the forest, was wiped out, through the cold weather, and, it's Ediso's now tundra. So that brings us to Solarwood, as I said, and, yes, it's built around academics because Burkhalter's Academy originally, the central tower, Apsis Tower, was once an observatory from the age of Pangaea. However, that's not how things are anymore. So, yeah. So, that strand of academics of seeking answers to the universe, that's where Burkhalter's Academy was built around. And I've actually read some comments wondering if this is basically like a Harry Potter, a storyline. Are we going to defeat Voldemort? What is this? Like it's a school, but I can say it's built around a university, a college, an academy, but but things are not built around grades and all that. That's just a setting because like with Sherlock Holmes, the bad guy is James Moriarty. Where does he work? He works at a university. He's the top dog with mathematics, and that's the best parallel I can describe for this, is that it's set in an academic setting, but you're going to be doing a whole of a hell lot more than just than like attending classes. In fact, you're not going to be doing most of attending classes because you're not going to learn much because I don't have a PhD in mathematics. I'm not going to teach you guys. Go to school. This is a video game.
Ember Sword is not responsible for your higher education.
Yes. Even through COVID times, you have to still attend classes. So let's go south. Let's go to Duscaron. That is that's a sand nation, and the interesting thing about its history is that it was always generally a desert, yes, but it's not a high desert. It's not like the Sahara. It wasn't always like this duplicitous, devious place. And it's still not. I've heard people, say, "Hey, is this just like a trashy place where everyone goes all Mad Max?" And actually, in the earliest days of Thanabus, during the Age of Pangaea, it was a popular trade route. Traders would go all across the moon because you wouldn't want to settle there as a sane person. People don't have an option now because they don't have spaceships. They're not part of a civilized society too much. It's, a rambunctious, after world. It's after you have after society has kind of crumbled and we're rebuilding it in this post-apocalypse. We still have a ways to go, but it used to just be for trade routes, and now it's run through that genesis. It's run by the trade family, the Scarrows, with Noscaro as the leader in Maida, and they do the best that they can. It's actually a pretty neat place, and just that, yes, there's plenty of room for outlaws, but through the balance of the game, I want to say that outlaws exist in all the regions, even, next to the heart of the Republic, in Skyder, actually, dare I say, especially in Skyder and Ediso, you're going to have some unscrupulous people around the edges. So don't think that just because a place is, thematic, that it is going to be a complete comprehensive color, because, no, we have all shades here. And last but not least in my book, it might be in some of your books, but not in my book, we come to Severand. Yes, the the toxic jungles of Severand. And this, yes, like people have surmised, it is a former prison colony during the earlier days of the Republic. It was where they sent their prisoners because they didn't have room. They were still rebuilding their society, during those days. So they shipped them down south and said, "Good luck, see ya." In this place has an overrun jungle and just all sorts of monsters and everything. But the thing is, it's not bad. People there might be badass, but they survived. That's the important thing about Severand. Everyone there survived, and now with the recent years, with just some proactivity from a certain figure or two, I don't want to spoil everything. Severand is finally uniting as a society. They're still trying to find their feet, but yes, they're they're trying to find their feet, and of an actual nation that could rival the other nations has arisen out of this jungle. So I'd say that that's my description of the four nations.
Severin, to me, I picked it, so I'm personally biased, but by reading the codex that you had put, the internal document that we use as a frame of reference to get to know the world, I pictured it as sort of this territory full of Arnolds from Predator, and that's what sold me, like, immediately.
Yeah, there are a few Arnolds there.
Hell yeah. That's what I love to hear. Well, you gave an overview of the four nations, so that would at least put some of these arguments to bed. I want to talk specifics, specifically relationships. I mean, they are four nations in the same place. Naturally, there would be some geopolitical tension, I would assume, some type of relationships. What are the relationships between the different nations?
Glad you asked, because this is a big question as well. As I mentioned, the Republic governs the Northern Hemisphere, and it's not like Solarwood was annexed by Ediso in the beginning. No, it was just a unification. That's where the remnants of the established society, most of them lived. So the people from Ediso reached out to Solarwood, and they offered assistance and said, we have to stick together through this. We don't know what's going to happen. This is a scary time. Like, our nation, our world, Pangea wiped out. So, they have a close bond, and they have the same government, but, for geopolitical purposes, they're separate nations, so kind of like member states of the same government.
Okay.
And then there's Duscaron, which that one I would describe as it's autonomous, and it doesn't have fealty to anyone. However, it has the most relationship with Ediso, with the Republic, because it's a major trade hub. It has plenty to offer, and the Republic respects that, to a certain extent, but, two is stronger than one, and so the Republic kind of pushes for, favorability, some perks, and since the Republic is, like, pretty much the only other civilized government on Thanabus, the Duscaron looks to comply where they can, so long as their dignity is not lost. And so Duscaron is technically an ally, with a bit of a tenuous relationship with the Republic, and it's difficult to say for Severin. Like, that's how Duscaron would say it, because Severin has only recently been a country. It used to be just a place of outlaws, and so it's they're still trying to find their feet with what that specifically is. So they like those two nations, Severin and Duscaron, don't really mix much, because they have no need to at this point. And then Severin, it is an all-out war with the Republic, specifically Ediso. And this hasn't always been this way, but with the unification of the people of Severin under one government called the Damned, like, this is a new occurrence. Severin is seen as a terrorist state almost by most of Thanabus. So they're the odd ducks, if you will. And with that, I want to stress with Solarwood that Burkhalter's Academy is not just for the people of the Republic. They actually, due to early foundations about being a place for everyone, that everyone can have a shot at a better life. It's a place that someone even from Severin, a warring nation, could attend. And the reason for that is because before the last few years, Solarwood never had to worry about an enemy country. But technically, by proxy, they are an enemy of Severin, but someone from Severin can still attend because they're still trying to figure out the logistics of that diplomacy, and so that's my overview for the different relationships. You can see it's a bit more complex than you might imagine. It's not all black and white, actually.
Yeah, it seems very sort of tenuous, where Severin seems to be, as far as I understood it, it's sort of the focal point of the conflicts, in that they have tensions with every nation. So does that mean that everybody is in a way unified against Severin, or is it more complicated than that?
As I said, Duskrun isn't exactly unified against them. It's more of Duskrun and Severin don't engage. Severin, they do have a militant element. I have to say that,
Naturally,
even
yeah.
from a neutral perspective, they have a militant element. But so they do send people to every nation, including Duskrun, for different missions. But there's some neutrality between Severin and Duskrun at this point.
At this point, ooh, that's ominous. You mentioned black and white. I want to go into morality a bit. We discussed this a bit off mic, but you don't necessarily believe in a black and white morality scale. So, am I correct in assuming that no nations are good guys or bad guys?
You're absolutely correct, and this is to address people, saying, "Hey, the Republic are the bad guys." No, they're not. They are guys. It's only that you have half the moon that is unified. Half the moon that has issues with it. It's kind of like if we have Lithuanian players, they might not be the most favorable about an American player, or about the United States, or China or Russia. They might not, be over the moon about the whole concept of the countries. They're not going to have the Trump American first approach. They're going to, say, yeah, the United States, they're pretty big, yeah. A lot of good that does me. And that's pretty much the relationship that the other two nations have with the Republic, but that does not mean good or evil. That just means matter of perspective, because after all, I did say that Severin is seen as almost a terroristic nation, did I? And that's the important thing, is that internally with the Bright Star Studios, we actually aren't on any character's team as a whole. The funny thing is that we actually have staff members that, are rooting for a character that I might personally want to kill. If I want to kill them, I'll have it happen. But, that's the thing. I feel very proud about the balance of the game, where people, align evenly with the different nations, and I think that's indicative of just a sense of morality. It's all a sense of alignment, of where of personal preference.
Right, yeah.
Good and evil are points of view, and just what we deal with are actions and how people would react in such an extreme situation as what Ember Sword has with its lore. And yeah, that there will be people that you have to fight against in Ember Sword, but I think that everyone will find that you're not just going to be rattling sabers with the same team all the time. If you play the game all the way through, all the quests, you're actually going to pretty much fight against every faction, and you're going to help every faction in some way or another. And, even like the goody two shoes, Solarwood, you guys are you're in for some dark content, I tell you. Yes, the school is not going to be a very wholesome place. Schools can be scary.
The brighter the setting, the darker the secrets. That's reassuring to hear, because personally, my favorite fiction has always been, or my favorite narratives even, haven't had a clear-cut sense of morality so much as they have had strong characters who believe in their causes. which to me creates the most scintillating stories. And I mean, we talked about this before, but it's great to reiterate that we are trying to build a complex narrative here. We're not Kingdom Hearts, for example. I apologize to anybody who likes Kingdom Hearts. Vale, and that's about it. But yeah, big call out post right here on the podcast.
and with that, yes, like going off of that, I feel like morality, one of the stronger examples in I'll get to the next question in a moment, but before we move on, Harry Potter is excellent with morality because there are 4 houses. And it's clear that, yes, from Harry's perspective, there are a lot of bad people in Slytherin, but that doesn't mean that all Slytherins are bad. In fact, there are quite a few heroes there, like Snape and Slughorn, and, there are some bad Gryffindors. And I feel like that has a great advantage over Star Wars. I love Star Wars, but, the Sith and the Jedi, they say, like, there's this beautiful scene where, Anakin says that, the Sith rely on their passion while the Jedi rely upon, their need to help others. And I feel like that's not represented correctly in the plot because everyone who is driven by passion is inherently evil in Star Wars. And I look to avoid that kind of situation with Ember Sword.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tangent, I guess, but that I feel like is the main problem with that setting is that it's a very expansive universe that's very flat on the highest level or the most prominent level of its storytelling, where Jedi are limited at the emotional level. Both parties are. They can't really have complex characters because by definition they can't feel certain emotions. Which, oh boy, is that a very weird pitfall to build a whole universe upon. That's why I actually liked The Mandalorian, because it didn't have no lightsaber.
Yeah. Or did it?
Well, you never know. We can't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it quite yet. I've totally seen it though. It's the best. There's one This is such a weird tangent. I didn't need to keep going. One of my favorite wrestlers is on the show. That's what I was going towards. She is phenomenal. It's clear that in building the narrative, you've tried to be very detail oriented, at least to me. You've tried to make a balanced narrative that creates real characters. So how did you come up with the different nations using that thought process then?
Well, lots of processes actually. When I came on board, Sage actually had a few things in mind. The setting he pictured was more of like families and clans, almost like the Montagues and the Capulets, and a central nation in between them all. And so it was almost like a guild setting. And he actually showed this to me after I started writing the lore, but he said, "Hey, you might be better at this than I am, so please." So I suppose that I was with what I saw. We had the forest and the desert as the developed lands in the demos, the earliest ones, and so I figured what would be the most suitable for those, at least at an aesthetic level, and that included a school and then a wasteland that could be overrun by automatons, and that was the base level for Solarwood, and Duscaron, of course, and with that, we had those kind of plugged in at a very base level, but I also wanted a barren landscape, kind of like a hellish place, and that's where Severin originally came from, and but we decided that having hell as a nation, a wasteland, that doesn't really fly too well, so we decided the best compromise would be to have a predominantly jungle nation with a kind of ugly little capital at the center, like where there's a big piece of Starjan's planetoid sticking up, this jagged structure, which is skyscrape. And So that was kind of where Severin came from. The necessity for jungle meets my desire, my passion for a dark place of the world. And Ediso, that was a place that I initially thought of as a conglomerate place where kind of things mish and mash, because at that point I had developed enough of the plot that I wanted terraforming to be an element. So it's like, hey, things got mixed up crazy. But then, it is like, no, we need an Arctic region. We have a huge number of Scandinavian players. The company, is Scandinavian itself. Yes, we're international, but there's a lot of just back history there. And people want Vikings. People want snow. So yes, let's give them their snow Vikings and make them badass, and they rule the northern hemisphere. Yeah, so that's kind of where that came from. So it's actually been quite the process with coming up with the different facets, and the story has been, it's been written down for ever since I joined the project over 2 years ago, but at the same time, it's a very iterative process. In fact, I think that was about half a year ago that we changed and adjusted an element of this time scale, like to fit, actually a more scientifically realistic time scale. I'll just go with that. I don't like being redundant, but there we go. Yeah. We're on the spot. But no one will notice it actually, because it's an element that we hadn't have still yet to unveil. But it's been a very iterative process, and still there are parts of the timeline that people do not know about, and they will find out through playing the game, and those are like some big ones, especially big ones actually, were originated with Sage, and so it's basically my creativity meets his passion. What started this game in the first place in early 2018.
The iteration is, as a final topic, I would guess. Iteration in storytelling has been a challenge for most video game companies, where striking the right balance between gameplay evolutions and narrative evolution has been a struggle. I'm again envisioning Destiny here because I'm me. But how are you going to tackle the iterative narrative process once the game launches? Do you have any ideas, any hopes on how that's going to go?
Well, first of all, I have a special project that I think the fans are going to be very pleased to get their hands on. That I think is going to help with getting people acquainted with the world before the actual game launches. But more direct to your question, I think that it's important that I lay out as much detail as humanly possible in the game if someone wants to follow it. I think that's also important that people have the option to completely ignore the lore and still have a great time in the game. But I think that I'm always thinking about how I can splice things in. So different doodads that might just look like a funny looking feature to someone, it's going to be like, oh, that's the crux of the game, right there. Oh, I can't believe I'm here. I'm such a dork. That's what I would say. You guys don't need to say that. You can say you're cool. But you know what? I want things to be like interspersed. You to just place there as much as possible. I want dialogue to relate to different things. I don't want any one thing to be lore heavy. And what I mean by that, as a storyteller, that probably is like, what? No, but what I mean by that is that you won't have all the answers in one place. You're going to, like, if you complete a part of the game, if you complete Solarwood's quests, you're going to have a quarter of the story, and you're going to hopefully want more. Or you'll just be annoyed and decide to just... ransack caravans and be awesome. Hey, we need plenty of badasses in that world, so, be my guest. But I basically want the option to be there, I want to have as much in the little details.
Yeah, allow people to go as deep as they want to, kind of like Dark Souls.
Yeah, and to do that, every single, like I think I mentioned this a while back, every single character has a fully fleshed out backstory, all the way down to what their first pet was, and the last 4 digits of their social security number.
That is excellent.
Yeah. I'm glad you think so.
I mean, I'm a huge dork for that type of stuff. When I play something that I enjoy, I'm happy when somebody has put the thought and work into making the universe as deep as essentially the player wants to go. Like, if you want to just go through the main narrative, I make a distinction between narrative and lore. That's why I asked, right? Where the main through line of the narrative can be something that, you pick up, you experience this part of the Ember Sword story, and then you go do whatever. Or you can stop by every pot and pan, put your hands in them. Oh, is that a parchment? What does it say? I love that stuff. I love it when a world feels three-dimensional. I love it when there's like tangible depth of history in a given setting. And I'm happy that we're going that way.
Yeah, and when people describe me as a lore master, like, I think that people think, oh, he writes the quests and he comes up with the geeky stuff that, some of us will like it. I hope that it's understood that there's also a huge burden of responsibility in, helping design the game to be as aesthetically pleasing and also functional as possible. The best functionality possible, where people, their time, it's not just about money invested, it's about time invested, that you feel like very rewarded. And there's much more to that than lore, but, I think in both the perspective of, what story do I want to have told, and also how enjoyable is it, if you, want to have if you want to have just a surface deep experience, or, just you have every option, everyone can be happy if all our different departments are saying, hey, this works for me, and that's the thing. I don't expect everyone to be big into the lore, but I do have the hope that they find some enjoyment in the game, even if it's just, grinding and whatnot.
I feel like every cast you're on, you find just the perfect way to sum up the conversation and to just like stick the landing. So yeah, that is the end of the podcast. Thank you, Sam, for taking the time. Thank you for this wonderful little anecdote at the end. We're back, everybody. Expect the podcast to be on a more regular schedule. I thank you for listening. I thank, again, Sam, for participating, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Hell yeah. Hey, you made it to the end. Congratulations. That must mean you like us enough to want more, right? Well, good news. We're all over the internet. Go to embersword.com and subscribe to our newsletter for a chance to play the game early, as well as the latest interesting tidbits on the game and the team. Join our lovely Discord community over at discord.gg/embersword. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at PlayEmbersword for regular updates on what we're up to. And remember the basics. Drink water, be kind to each other, and spread the word about Ember Sword.